We know all these things about St. Maximilian Kolbe's life, but what happened in that starvation bunker? He and those other 9 men that were sentenced to death by starvation, what happened to them? Hi, my name is Father Mike Schmitz, and this is Ascension Presents. One of the great saints of the last century is a saint by the name of St. Maximilian Kolbe. If you joined us last Lent for our journey through Lent, the homily series on Sundays, we learned of the life of a man named Takashi Nagai, a Japanese man who was, I believe he was raised Shinto, became atheist, then became ultimately a Catholic. He was influenced by St. Maximilian Kolbe on his missionary journeys to Japan. In this remarkable way, their paths crossed. Really remarkable. Let's say remarkable 5 more times. But St. Maximilian Kolbe also was an evangelist. He used media at the day, back in the early part of the 1900s, basically 1920s, 30s in there, to bring the gospel to the world. He was arrested for being a Catholic and for kind of standing up against the Nazi regime. He was put in Auschwitz. And while he was in Auschwitz, I think he'd been there for quite a bit of time. There was one man who was thought to have escaped. And so the Nazi guards selected 10 random men to go into a starvation bunker. The 10th man that was selected was a man who broke down and said, I have a wife, I have children, please spare me. And so here is Father Maximilian Kolbe, who said, let me take his place. I'm a Catholic priest. That's the story a lot of us know about St. Maximilian Kolbe. There's a movie that just came out called Triumph of the Heart. I'm going to use the word remarkable again. This remarkable movie, Triumph of the Heart, starts there. It starts with the lineup of all of these prisoners in Auschwitz, and never thought of this. I thought that, okay, he went to the starvation bunker, was this great model of virtue, even at the last 14 days of his life. I just assumed he was surrounded by like-minded people who shared his faith, and so he was a great witness to them in Auschwitz. And then I didn't realize that, no, that wouldn't be the case.
Can we pray together? With a priest?
He was in Auschwitz with, other Catholics, of course. He was in Auschwitz with Jews, of course, with communists. He was in Auschwitz with atheists and whatnot. And that recognition of, oh my goodness, there would have been this variety of people in this bunker. And Triumph of the Heart is one of those movies that investigates how a person can not only face death with the Lord, can not only face the temptation towards despair and still choose hope, but also can be in this place of, okay, you don't look to me as a friend. No one automatically held him in high regard. He just threw away his life in order to spare the life of this stranger. But there's something about that movement and that decision that is exactly what our world needs right now. Before he went into Auschwitz, Father Maximilian Kolbe, he said, indifference is the poison of our age. Indifference is the poison of our age. You know, another saint, Saint John Paul II, he once famously said that the opposite of love isn't hate. The opposite of love is use. You've heard that virtue is in the middle, right? So the virtue of love being in the middle, there's 2 extremes. And yes, absolutely, just like John Paul II had said, one of the extremes of the antithesis of love is use. But the other extreme, the antithesis of love, is indifference. That's how typically we're tempted to react or interact with people. We either, hey, you have something that I could use, so the opposite of love is use. Or you don't have anything I could use, so I'm indifferent to you. I'm indifferent to your suffering. I'm indifferent to your joy. I'm indifferent to you. Because why? I can't use anything, therefore I'm indifferent. So love is in the middle, right? Virtue is in the middle. Maximilian Kolbe, just like John Paul II, identified that what we're called to is called to love, which means, like John Paul II said, I may never use another person for my own pleasure, my own benefit, my own use, reducing their humanity, right? But Maximilian Kolbe identified that indifference is the poison of our age. Yes, of course, we are surrounded by this temptation to use human beings as objects, right? But we're also driven by this indifference. We're tempted to see others and ignore them. We're tempted to walk past them. And there's something about this movie, Triumph of the Heart, that just, here's the first thing. It's really well done. This is not cheesy. It's not sappy. It's not overacted. All the reactions, all the emotions, they seem like, wow, that's a genuine, that's a legitimate, that's a human, not just an actor, right? That makes sense. But secondly, this movie is remarkable because by showing how Maximilian Kolbe refused to be indifferent, I felt convicted. I think St. Maximilian Kolbe has to be one of my favorite saints, not only because of what he did in his life, but also because he convicts me. Like his witness convicts me. I look at his life and I think, okay, if I was in that same situation, any of those situations, whether I was in Auschwitz, and would I volunteer? Would I lay down my life for someone else? Or here in this bunker, like it's revealed in Triumph of the Heart, would I just fall in on myself? Because that's our temptation, right? In our suffering, we fall in on ourselves. Or would I be like him, who kept his eyes fixed on Jesus, first of all, and secondly, on the men around him? You know, as he identified indifference as the poison of our age, he refused to be poisoned by it. If you were in that situation, would you be indifferent? Like I wonder if I would be indifferent. Or would I choose to focus on Jesus? Would I choose to focus on the people around me? I guess I can find out the answer. I find out the answer every day, right? I find out the answer every single day when I look at my life and say, okay, did I choose to focus on Jesus today? Like, did I choose to give Jesus any time today? And was I indifferent to the situation, to the story, to the plight, to the suffering, to the joy, to the reality of people around me? I get my answer. I get my answer. Who we would be in Auschwitz is who we are today. We have to be honest about that. That if my life is marked by indifference, indifference towards God or indifference towards the people around me, my life in Auschwitz would be marked by indifference towards God and indifference to the people around me. In fact, it might even be marked by more than just indifference. It might be marked by hatred or resentment or even being brutal towards the people around me. This is one of the powerful things about getting to know the saints and seeing even an artistic, really beautifully artistic and powerful depiction of them in that moment, that apex moment, right? That moment of crossroads, that moment of truth. I get to see that's how a saint would act. And I realize how far I am from being a saint. We all were put in a situation today where there were people around us. And how did I interact with them? Did I fix my eyes on Jesus? Or was I indifferent to him? Did I give my attention? Did I give my anything to the people around me? Or was I indifferent to them? I don't often recommend movies. I don't think I do, at least. But this one is different. Triumph of the Heart is different. It takes you on that journey. And that journey is not just the last 2 weeks of Maximilian Kolbe's life, or the lives of the other 9 men in that bunker. I believe it takes you on a journey of your own heart, because it took me on a journey through my own heart. And that's a journey that we all need to take, right? Especially if we, like Maximilian Kolbe and like every other saint, want to end up having hearts like Jesus. Hearts that don't use, hearts that are not indifferent, but hearts that love. Anyways, for all of us here at Ascension Presents, my name's Father Mike. God bless.